The Tom Woods Show, episode 1591.
Prepare to set fire to the index card of allowable opinion. Your daily dose of liberty education starts here. The Tom Woods Show.
A lot of our people complain that the Pentagon spends and wastes a lot of money, but the damage it does to the American economy and to American society is much greater than just that. It deforms the economy in ways most people don't even realize. Get the full story in my brand new free ebook, The Pentagon versus the Economy. Pick it up at militaryeconomy.com. Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. Well, it's always fun to have Scott Horton on the Tom Woods Show. That is something we can say for sure, and I'm delighted to have him back. You know, Scott has credentials, as long as his arm. He's, of course, the host of the Scott Horton Show. You can check him out at scotthorton.org. He's also the host of Anti-War Radio on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles. He's the director of the Libertarian Institute over at libertarianinstitute.org, and, of course, has been with antiwar.com for years and years and years. He's the author of Fool's Errand, Time to End the War in Afghanistan, a book that will just knock your socks off. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the Libertarian Party, and Jacob Hornberger, who is our favored candidate. Not to say he's the only good guy. There are other people who are good, and that's fine too, but we prefer Jacob. And he's had some success recently. We want to talk about that. But I do want to say about Hornberger, in case it doesn't become obvious, and in case you haven't heard our previous episodes, the guy is a really, really great representative of libertarianism. So it's a real delight to be able to endorse him. So we'll talk about that and then just see where the conversation goes. Scott, welcome back.
Thanks, Tom. Happy to be here.
All right. Today we actually have some good news. Scott, you're a great guy. I have a lot of fun spending time with you, but I don't associate you in the podcasting world with good news. So this is a nice change of pace. But before we get to that, you want to say a little something to the folks about something you said when you were on the show before. So I'm just going to let you say whatever it is you want to say.
Yeah, and I'll try not to go on too long. A couple of things. The first thing is I'm working on the book, and your audience especially was so generous last summer in supporting the fund drive for the new book. And I'm sorry, I wish it was out by now. But you know how I get where I kind of belabor the details a little too much? It's sort of like that. But I am working on it every single day. So I want people to know that. And I'm really appreciative for all the support. But secondly, the thing is I owe your audience an apology. I was right, the thing I said, but I said it wrong. Last time I was on the show, I think we were talking about the Iran nuclear deal. And I sort of, the way I said it made it sound like I was insulting your audience, like all they know is a bunch of right-wing talking points or whatever. But that's totally not what I meant by that. You objected at the time, and I saw in the comments section some people really didn't like the way that came out. But what I was really getting at was that I get emails constantly from your audience that say to me, gee, I was a right winger on foreign policy until I learned from you on the Tom Woods Show. And this is, how I came to understand about the Iran deal or about the war in Yemen or about the Iraq war, which I had supported and now I don't anymore. So I wasn't really referring to your hardcore following in your Facebook group there, who they already know everything I know and more. But you do cast a pretty broad net, and most libertarians come from the right anyway. And you somewhat, a little bit culturally speaking, historically lean a little bit right and have kind of a broader outreach to people coming into libertarianism from the right. And, frankly, one of the last things that people get to figure out when they come from the right into libertarianism is that anti-imperialism is at the heart of what we're about. And you don't have to be a commie to hate this foreign policy. And just like this was the power of the Ron Paul presidential runs. If you like your identity, you can keep it. You just don't have to believe in this stupid war stuff anymore. And so all I was trying to do was just say, like, in that particular case, was like, I know you guys have heard essentially the right-wing narrative about the Obama nuclear deal, that all the pallets of cash and all this kind of stuff, when the reality is actually a lot closer to the way his partisans would have put it at that point. And that's the only thing he ever did right in his whole life, probably. I guess the Cuba thing. It's the only thing about Obama that I support was that Iran deal. But anyway, I just didn't want to make it sound like I was criticizing your audience and calling them ignorant or even calling them conservatives and right-wingers when they're not. It's a libertarian show and a libertarian audience. But a lot of these people are coming from the right, and So anyway, I just wanted to apologize about that and try. I don't know if I made myself any clearer, but
no, that's fine. Look, we
I'm
love
here
you,
for you.
Scott.
I'm trying to help. That's all,
Yeah, no. And in that episode, I did pipe up and say, now hang on a minute. My folks already know that, and I know you know that, so it's no problem. I mean, nobody.
But you have a huge audience. I mean, that's the thing. So you're hardcore. They already do know, but a lot of the new people, maybe they don't, And because media is so polarized nowadays, if you listen to conservative leaning media, you probably have never heard a decent case for the nuclear deal in your life. You know what I mean? You probably only ever hear criticisms of it. And depending on which media ecosystem you're a victim of, you might really be cut out of some important insights,
Yeah, no kidding. So, all right, let's move on to the happy news then, which has to do with our old friend, endorsed by you and me for what that's worth, for the Libertarian Party presidential nomination, Jacob Hornberger, had some good news in recent days.
Yeah. Well, so the Iowa thing was such a catastrophe for the Democrats, and that got all the attention. But Jacob did really well in the Iowa caucus there. He won with, I think it was 47% of the vote, about as strong a plurality as you could possibly get without winning an outright majority there. And so that's really good. And it seems like, he's got a lot of momentum going. There's Super Tuesday is coming up, and there are 3 primaries on Super Tuesday where the Libertarians are on the ballot, and that's California, Massachusetts, and North Carolina. And like Iowa, those are non-binding on the delegates as far as how they vote at the National LP Convention in Austin, here in Austin in May. But it's still important, and it's still a strong indicator of the level of support that he's been corralling there. And also on February the 25th, there's another one in Minnesota. And all I know from, I talk to him every, week and a half or 2 or something like that. And he's just having the time of his life. He's going to these conventions, the state conventions every weekend, and giving his stump speech and meeting people. And everywhere he goes, he tells me people come up to him and say, I'm here because of Scott Horton and Tom Woods and Dave Smith and or Michael Heiss and the Mises Caucus. And then this is what I was really counting on, Tom, and it is coming true. And that is that a lot of people who are the old guard in the Libertarian Party, they love Hornberger, and they always have. And they remember him from 25 years ago and 20 years ago when he was still in the party and making a ruckus, and they're happy to have him back. And so that was part of our secret mission here, was we're doing this sort of outsider, almost like putsch or something into the Libertarian Party, the Libertarian movement. We're trying to corral tens of thousands of people if we can, everybody we can, to all join and all bum rush the party and all to support Hornberger. But so how's that going to look to the people inside the party? The answer is it looks fine, because it's Hornberger is the one that we're hoisting on our shoulders. He's the one that we're trying to put in there. And he's known as a plumb line libertarian guy, radical minarchist, and is appealing to just about all factions. And so here we are, a bunch of outsiders kind of smashing our way into the LP, but we're bringing, one of our greatest champions to come and be the standard bearer. So I think it's working. I think people are grateful rather than resentful at our, outsider, game that we're playing here, because it's only halfway that way,
Can we just clarify something you said there about the results of these primaries not binding the delegates? Because this is quite different from how the nominee is determined by the Democratic and Republican parties.
Right. Well, and of course, historically speaking, the Republicans and the Democrats always did their deciding at the conventions. And it's really only in the last, say, 40 years, maybe 50 years, that it's kind of the era of the primaries where that really has kind of taken precedent. But with the Libertarian Party, I'm no expert on the electoral politics angle of this, but from what I understand, it seems like this comes down to the convention every time, and it's not a matter of, it could be that in some states, results of primaries or whatever are binding, or votes at state conventions or whatever. I'm not sure of the rules, but I know that overall it's decided with floor votes at the conventions. And that's why it's so important that people don't just kind of, click like on Facebook, but they really do join the Libertarian Party, join their state party, do whatever it takes to participate in the actual process to become delegates. Here in Texas, I think this is right. I mean, this is what my buddy has told me. He's done the research. He said for me and the group of people that I've kind of organized to join up here, my libertarian friends in Austin, that we have to go to the precinct convention on this day, and this day. And we have to go to the state convention down in Brownsville, which I don't know why they put at the very southern tip of Texas, but anyway. And then we have to do all of that to be able to be delegates to the national convention. So in your state, ladies and gentlemen, it might not be that difficult, but it might. And the important thing, in fact, I need to double check with Michael Heiss about that. That just sounds so crazy to me. So exceptionally difficult to get done. But I'm willing to do it. And I think it's working. I mean, I think, I came on the show, last November, and I pitched this whole thing as let's try to recreate the Ron Paul revolution. Here we have a guy that we can believe in, a guy that we can count on, a guy that if we do the work, knocking on doors, signing petitions, being delegates, doing whatever we have to do to support on the organizational level, we can rest assured that this guy's representing our movement and our philosophy very well out there on a Ron Paulian level, very well. And that it's really something worth getting behind. And it's worked. I mean, from everything Jacob's told me is everywhere he goes, he does great. And everywhere he goes, people come up and they say, listen, I'm part of this Hornberger revolution because Tom Woods sent me. And so, huge appreciation. And I'm so grateful. I know Jacob is so grateful to your audience for really coming through. And I mean, my audience too, but yours is 10 times bigger than mine. And so,
well, look, he's been on the show several times over the years, starting the very, very early episodes and then up till quite recently. In fact, one of my most listened to episodes is a Hornberger episode because as time goes on, my episode titles seem to have gotten longer and longer because I get into more specific topics. But I came up with a beautiful one for his semi-recent episode with me. It was simply Abolish the CIA. Now, people had to listen to that. You have an episode title like that, you have to click play.
Yep.
And then they heard him, and what's impressive about him is, as you say, he's been writing articles every single day, writes an article every day for years and years and years and years and years. Well, after a while, just pretty much everything when it comes to libertarianism. He knows the ins and outs of everything, and he will represent us well. And in fact, when I look at people who, let's say, might not like me that much, I mean, there are a handful of those, Scott. But yet,
it's amazing to me.
I know it. But yet, when they go to criticize Hornberger, he must be the squeakiest clean guy in the world. They can't find a thing except Woods likes him. It'd be things like, okay, well, fair enough. But is there anything wrong with him? And they're just left stammering. They have nothing to say. So that's a pretty good sign too. But what do we say, Scott? I mean, we got to have some answer for this. Gary Johnson had name recognition.
Yeah.
Jacob Hornberger does not have name recognition. So at least Gary Johnson had that going for him. And so maybe the electoral result with Jacob Hornberger is not going to be as strong. So doesn't that concern you?
It absolutely does. And the answer is it's up to us. And frankly, my best idea is not good enough. My best idea is we'll just make sure and get him really good and briefed up and get him really, really good on Russia and let that drive the media crazy, but that's not very good. He's not a governor. He's not a member of the House of Representatives. He's not a vice president. He's not, Mayor Pete isn't either, but even Mayor Pete's a mayor. So you're right. Now he is a lawyer. He's got an advanced degree. We don't want to do anything silly like take a chainsaw to the tax code or do anything that's kind of gimmicky. But I think you're right that this is a real problem that we got to figure out a way to make him famous. And I don't know what it is. And maybe people in your audience, maybe this can be a discussion in the Facebook group there, is how do we get this guy's name out there in a way that really establishes him in the minds of the American people and as a serious candidate, as a real player in this thing. And I think, for example, if he could get that hour-long town hall that CNN gave Gary Johnson last time, now I know he'd just knock it out of the park and he'd be a viral sensation and whatever, all of that stuff. The question is, how do we get him that CNN town hall in the first place? How do we get him on Morning Joe in the first place so he can knock that Aleppo question right out of the park for them? And I really don't know. I mean, I think, probably if one of my ideas was, if, assuming he gets the nomination, that once he does get the nomination, then we just run him really hard against Trump for about 5 or 6 weeks and get the media, the liberal media, excited about that. Oh, look, we can split the vote against the Republican. Let's do that. Let's promote this guy, which was their motive for paying so much attention to Johnson last time. And then once they take that bait and we get him out there, then let him turn around and make fun of Bernie Sanders all day too, which is pretty easy.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I don't know if you saw Bernie Sanders' speech the other night after he won New Hampshire. He didn't mention the wars once. It's like, what is the point of being a communist if you're not an anti-imperialist? You're a communist, but for the F-35? What is this? Anyway, there ought to be plenty of room for Hornberger to get, lots of mileage out of both of them if he can get the attention in the first place. But I am absolutely open to ideas. I mean, I think that, as you say, he's really starting from not even a state house seat here, How do we get the momentum? I don't really know. I mean, part of it is, money bombs and, Jacob Hornberger revolution, grassroots support across the country. Hornberger blimps and Google Jacob Hornberger and all the things that we did for Ron to try to publicize Ron, all that grassroots support. It's on us to do it. We got to figure it out.
Well, I mean, look, let's face it. Most candidates in the history of the Libertarian Party have not been previous office holders. I believe that's a safe thing to say.
Right.
Like Harry Brown and Maru and Badnarik, just 3 off the top of my head. Who was the very first one? Now I can't think of his name. John Hospers. It's John Hospers. That's the guy.
Okay.
I don't think he held any office either. He actually got an electoral vote, as a matter of fact. So Roger McBride, let's see. No, he had been in the Vermont House of Representatives for 2 years. That was his entire political career. Ed Clark. So most of them haven't, just FYI.
Yeah.
So, and I wonder about, did Jill Stein ever hold an office in the Green Party?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying this makes it good or bad. I'm just saying it's not unprecedented.
Right. Yeah, and Nader wasn't an office holder, but he had real name recognition previously, as a consumer advocate. Of course, and all that stuff.
He would. Yeah.
But I really think that the answer is it's just going to have to be up to us. I mean, I know you remember, especially in 2008, the excitement around Ron Paul. People are, plowing into their farm, into their fields near the airport. Google Ron Paul. So when planes take off, they're like, what? This guy's got a crop circle in his name out here. What is this? Just making it exciting. Everybody on MySpace changing their picture to Ron and all those things. Like, that's what we have to do. We got to get that level of excitement up. And I think, especially once he gets the nomination, then it's going to be all in. And there's so many glaring and obvious weaknesses to exploit on the part of Trump and Sanders, who I think is probably going to get it, but whatever. Whoever else it is. If it's Bloomberg, even better. I mean, so.
Oh, jeez. There would be just an explosion inside the Democratic Party. I mean, up till recently, I really was focused primarily on the Republican Party as the one that was fraying. And I don't know how I was so short-sighted. Yes, the Republican Party really is internally divided. But, geez, the Democrats, they just can't stand each other. And by the way, did you see this whole ridiculous thing with Klobuchar? Like, I couldn't even care less about the difference. Who knows what the difference between Klobuchar and Buttigieg is anyway, right? I don't know. But he made a comment about the impeachment hearings. And he was saying, it's so demoralizing to watch that you're tempted just to change the channel and put on cartoons instead. But that's the cynic in us. We need to overcome that. It's important for us to keep watching, to be engaged, to be informed. So he gives this little talk. So Klobuchar then characterizes what I just said as, the other day Mayor Pete said, we should just turn it off and watch cartoons. And I'm sorry, I can't do that. I have a responsibility. So it's like she knows she's lying. And then she kept saying it and kept saying it and kept saying it. He never said we should turn it off and watch cartoons. He says, you might be tempted to, but that would be the wrong thing to do. And she wrote this all through the debate and all through the New Hampshire primary. I mean, what a disgusting human being.
That's so funny. Well, just the coverage of New Hampshire, where all night long on MSNBC, they're celebrating Klobuchar's huge third place victory. I mean, wow, this is really her moment to shine. It's just really third, huh?
And yet, Ron Paul came in third in the Iowa caucuses in 2012. We had actually hoped he'd come in a little bit higher. Somehow, of all people, who was that idiot senator?
Santorum.
Deer in the headlights. Santorum. Just came out of nowhere and ended up either he and Romney were just a few votes apart. But anyway, third place for a guy, over 20% of the vote, for a guy who is more or less saying, we got to start the whole country all over again. We got to just chuck everything we got, started again. I mean, a really, really radical message for him to place that well. And there was like no media coverage saying, wow, that's amazing that a candidate this radical came in third. But man, they can't talk enough about this bore coming in third for the Democrats.
Yeah. It's completely ridiculous. And the fact that I don't know how she got her bump anyway, if it was the cartoon crack or what, but I mean, it shouldn't be too hard to beat Warren and Biden, but that it was her instead of, I don't know, why not Yang? At least he's got some personality or something, I don't know.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like a robot. Now, incidentally, is there any talk about a vice presidential nominee? I mean, probably we wouldn't.
For Hornberger, I don't know. I don't know. Okay. Oh, we should mention Gab, as long as we're talking about New Hampshire real quick. She did terrible. She got 3%, and she had bet everything she had on touring around New Hampshire for months here, skipped Iowa entirely. So it was really disappointing to see that it's just somehow the wars are just not a priority on the liberal left side at all right now.
Not at all. No. And I mean, I think they were a big priority during Vietnam because of the draft. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, I care about war because I don't want to be sent over there to die pointlessly. If that's all we can get people, if that's the only motivation we can get, it's better than nothing. So I'm not mocking them.
In 05 and 06, at least they pretended to care in order to exploit that. And
that's true. But almost all of them.
Get back to Congress.
Yeah, but how many of them? Who were office holders at the time voted, against funding the military? So did anything of substance to stop it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on a minute. Damn it, Scott. This was supposed to be a good news episode. Now, what the hell are you doing here?
Opportunity for Hornberger, man. All the more opportunity for Hornberger. Donald Trump said he's going to end these wars. Yeah, #hope, #change. Get back to me as soon as he ends a single one of these things. He's done nothing but escalate every one of them. He's escalated every single one of the wars he inherited from Obama.
Yeah.
Mr. Humble foreign policy.
All right, that's more like it. There's some energy. All right. So what's next for Hornberger between now and the convention? Do you know what he's up to?
Well, I know he's hitting state conventions every single weekend. His only problem is trying to figure out, how to rank them in order of importance and how to line up his airplane trips. He told me he's afraid of flying too. He's doing all this while he's afraid of flying.
Oh my gosh.
Flying all around the country every single weekend, going to these things and doing everything he can, to drum up the support. And then I think he said that by the end of February, or no, I guess it's the end of March is when all the state conventions finally wrap up. And then he'll have a month before the national convention to do more broad campaigning. But right now, the important part here is, for us, I guess, to emphasize that the work is being done. It's my audience and your audience and Dave Smith's audience and Michael Heiss's, Mises Caucus, and these guys are getting together and are doing the work. And so that stands also as an invitation to everybody who's not on board yet to get up out from behind Facebook and get out there and participate. Get yourself and your friend and your father-in-law elected to be delegates to the national convention. We can do this, and we have to make sure that this works and that Hornberger is our guy. And then we can run one hell of a general election campaign here. So,
well, let me just say one quick thing to people listening who say, I don't care about the Libertarian Party. This doesn't affect me in any way. I remind you, it is called the Libertarian Party. When most people encounter the Libertarian Party, I guarantee you their first thought is not going to be, this organization probably doesn't really reflect libertarianism. No. They will think this is libertarianism. What else are they going to think? And so it does matter if the Libertarian Party is promoting libertarians and is being courageous in taking on unpopular positions and saying
right
things
about
that no one else says.
You know, my institute is called the Libertarian Institute, and people say to me all the time, so is that all about the Libertarian Party and building up the Libertarian Party and funneling candidates into the Libertarian Party and Libertarian Party? And I tell them, no, it has nothing to do with the Libertarian Party. And then they say, but what does it have to do with the Libertarian Party? And I say, nothing. And they go, yeah, but what's the party part? Those two words go together, libertarian and party. You know, what do you mean it's a movement and not a party? Of course it's a party. You know, that's just the presumption. It's so baked in. It's almost impossible to dissuade someone from understanding once they've kind of leaped to that conclusion, you know?
Well, so that's why I ultimately decided to become part of it, because it's a reflection on what I believe. And so I wanted to see what I could do. So I've had a whole bunch of my listeners in that spirit go ahead and join the party. And I even have a link for them to do it so that people know where these new members are coming from. They're coming from the Tom Woods Show. So LP, of course, the initials for Libertarian Party, tomwoods.com/LP is the link to join the party and join Scott and me and Dave Smith and all the cool people. I mean, really, could you imagine not wanting to be part of a thing that has Dave and Scott and me? And I don't know who these people are. I mean, that's impossible, right? We're doing something, and you guys should all be part of it. Scott, what are your parting words? This will probably be our shortest conversation of all time.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you to you and to all of your audience for going for this, for participating in this. I think this year we have the potential to wage a Ron Paul revolution-sized public relations campaign for peace and liberty. And that's what the Ron Paul revolutions were, those two campaigns, is the greatest speaking tours on behalf of peace and freedom and sound money that has ever been given. And that's the mission that we're on, and we can do it. Obviously, we need everybody's help to make it happen, to make the biggest thing out of it that we possibly can. So thanks a million to everybody who's already joined up and started participating. And thank yous to everybody who I just convinced who are going to, do what they can to help out now. And even if you don't become a delegate, at the very least, do your work on your social media or whatever it is to help make this thing viral, help promote, do whatever you can to make a big deal out of it. And then, thank you.
Well, thank you, Scott. So the links to remember today are tomwoods.com/LP. Also, what about Jacob's website? I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, it's jacobforliberty.com.
That's what I thought. And it's Jacob for Liberty. It's not the number 4. It's the actual word FOR, jacobforliberty.com. And then the third thing is I support Scott Horton every month, and you should support Scott Horton also. You can do that over at scotthorton.org. You'll see a donate tab. Go ahead and do that because Scott is doing heroic work for us, and we should support people who do heroic work because we're libertarians and we're always saying we don't need to be forced to do things. So if you don't do this voluntarily, you're going to embarrass the whole libertarian world. So don't do that. Go support Scott Horton. Thanks again, Scott. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for today. Guess what's coming next week? It's Walter Block Week. Walter Block is one of the most prolific libertarians ever. Not just living, but ever. His record of publication is almost unbelievable, and I mean that in the literal sense of unbelievable. So, it's not just that he's written a lot, he's a great communicator, as you'll see next week. He can take complicated things and explain them so well and beautifully and argue them so well and beautifully. We're going to have a great time next week. So if you haven't yet subscribed to the Tom Woods Show, please do so at tomwoods.com/Apple. And if you enjoy and appreciate what I'm doing over here, I sure would enjoy seeing you in my supporting listeners group, which, by the way, if you so desire, one of the benefits of that, and just one of the benefits of that, is membership in the Tom Woods Show Elite, where we have great discussions and great camaraderie. So go check that out at supportinglisteners.com as your weekend homework assignment, and I'll see you next week.
Become a smarter libertarian in just 30 minutes a day. Visit tomwoods.com to subscribe to the show for free, and we'll see you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.